been part of my Propel program now for the last 3 rounds. And everybody who is in Propel, my group coaching program, loves everything this man has to say. It's absolutely brilliant. Hold on a second. It timed out. I think we're live streaming now. But I'm not positive. This is the joys of live streaming, guys. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it looks like it's working this time. So I'm Terri, your host of the Terrific Tips podcast, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I have one of my closest clients, colleagues, associates here with us today. And some of you might recognize this totally awesome man, Brian Morgan, who's sitting to the left of me, of Think Deeply, Write Clearly. Got it right this time. And he has been working with me now a couple of times inside of my Propel group. So for those of you who don't know, I host a group coaching program called Propel. And several of my friends who have been in Propel have loved everything this man has to share because it's so brilliant and it's so simple. And that's why he's here with us today, so that he can drop some simple, brilliant knowledge on all of you totally awesome listeners today. So please join me in welcoming the one, the only, the amazing Brian Morgan. Brian, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me, Terri. Yeah. Really excited to be here.
Yay. I'm excited to have you. So Brian, as I was telling you when we were getting ready for the conversation today, we're all about like, what's been a big challenge you've had to overcome in your life, in your business, that you might be able to share with us here today?
Yeah. It's always a great question, Terri. And I think if I were to be fully heart honest in it, I don't know how many of your people, have jobs or are, underpaid in the jobs that they have, or underpaid in their entrepreneurial jobs or whatever. The biggest thing that I had to go through, I left my former company as an employee, right? Well, 5 years too late. By my like at least 5 years too late. That came from, well, a couple of different fears, right? One was economic, one, right? But I think if I really break it down, the biggest fear of that was I'm approaching language the way some of the managers think is stupid. Some of the marketing people think is stupid. Some of them, right? Because people are used to looking at things in a specific way. And when it comes to my business, what I do, what you do, there are guardrails. There are ways that the world has been taught to look at them, primarily by English teachers or business majors or whatever. And it never made sense to me. And I always had thoughts about it, and they were always pretty deeply held, and they were always, in retrospect, I was right on it. But when you're not surrounded by the people who say, yes, that makes sense, let's have a conversation about it, and you're surrounded by people who are saying, that's just, doesn't, we disagree with you or whatever. Then the leap came from, maybe I'm dumb or wrong, or it's not going to work, or I have to keep manipulating people or whatever in order to have a business or run help people with their language or whatever. And so probably the most difficult thing that I had to go through was risk on me, right? Like just risk that the way that I look at and process information made sense. And in a certain way, I think that's what people want when they hire us, right? Because we do a lot of things that other people do. It's just that we do it, I think, more deeply than other people, and more deeply understood than other people. And to me, there's stability in that depth. But some people find stability in just doing what everybody else is doing, right? And even if the results are mediocre, they say, well, you know, certain gurus or whatever do it this way, and so I'm just going to keep doing it that way, and no one will make fun of me or whatever, because even if it doesn't really work, I'm going to be inside the expected guardrails.
Mm.
And so for me, I think when I finally risked on me and my ability to do it, and the results, by the way, were immediate, like immediate. It was almost like the universe went, we've been waiting for you. And but when and then I think because we did it, and then we got used to getting comfortable being uncomfortable, particularly with putting language out in public, be it marketing or thought leadership language or anything else. We got used to being uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable. Uh, the clients started to pour in and say, I want to be that comfortable being uncomfortable, because that looks and sounds right. And that looks and sounds the way I want my business to be presented. And so we pretty immediately started getting clients and started
Mm.
getting access. But the hardest thing was, there's the voice inside your head that says, nobody's doing it like this, you must be an idiot. And right. And so you had to deal with that voice inside the head. And good things happen once you do. But if that makes any sense to you, that was the hardest thing. Was
Yeah.
there was a voice inside the head that wanted to shut the whole thing down for a long time, and then we got over it.
So I love that you touched on the concept of having to invest in yourself. You had to take the risk in yourself. And there might be some people listening to this conversation right now who have been working at the job 5 years longer than they should be. And they know that they're working at the job longer than they should be, longer than they've gotten any value out of that job, but they do it exactly right out of fear, fear in investing in themselves, fear of what if I fail. And that's a really big deal. So how did you get the monkey chatter in your brain to like chill out so that you could actually take that leap and get your feet underneath you in this new endeavor?
Um, there were a few things. Some of them were frankly just uh, practical, and I wouldn't recommend that. But like don't wait for there to be a practical solution. Um, but because of the nature of my job, the thing that I was doing best at that time was teaching, and it was not billable to the company, right? It wasn't billable to our clients, and so we had conversations about, could we get you off of payroll and on to being a consultant, which, like, we're on LinkedIn, we see you want to do this anyway. And so we sort of had a handshake between the two of us to have me start the business. The monkey off the back, if you want the real answer, is when you have that conversation. We knew people all throughout the industry, um, and I could have gotten another 9 to 5 in a phone call, and that was the right,
Mhm.
and that would like to not do that, and um, and I can tell you, uh, faith, like, and I don't mean religious faith. I mean, like, the faith that when right, so I was in theater, 20 years ago, right? And at various times I was writing books for a while, and as well. And there's this sort of inner creative person's faith that that person in a mess of other people could be the one person who gets published, right? Like, so there's this there's this like inner faith of that thing. But faith is different than ego, right? Like let's be really specific here, because I think that's a massive distinction. Faith is different than ego. And oftentimes we do these creative professions or go out on our own or whatever for the sake of our egos. Uh, and right, we like, I really want to make money, I really want to, I really want to shine, and I really want to show the world. And I did in my 20s, right? All of my creative efforts until I was probably, I went to a school that started to teach this correctly when I was about 30. But all of my creative efforts, now probably older than I was probably 35. All of my creative efforts before then were ego driven. But when I started to look at things from a really deeply understood and deeply held pace, and where you start to realize that the parts of the world that you can control inside you, if you understand them deeply, which takes the time to understand them, right? And that's where probably most people fail. I think that's probably why a lot of people hire us, is because they like that we can accelerate that process for them. But if you really deeply understand them, you realize how much stability is in there, and then you can take the risk on faith that your deep understanding of something will not put you in an unstable situation. But so faith and effort kind of go hand in hand. And my experience was that I never put in the right effort until I got older. And when I finally started putting in the right effort and I really understood things, I was old enough to be cautious of my own thinking and risk, right? And then it was really just a question of, and I can tell you, and I don't like this answer, Terry. I'm not proud to say this, but I can tell you, right when I was leaving that former job, and I knew I was in my last couple of months. I got a phone call from someone from Morgan Stanley, and the person said, there's 50 marketers in this building, and for whatever reason, I got 50 people here who could put my logo on something, but I want to work with you. And we just met. and so strangely, just that phone call, right? And if you know anything about, the financial space, there's all kind of compliance and things issues. And so it was quite a longer while before we turned that phone call into income. But just that phone call at that time was, okay, that's enough of an indication from the world that something's happening, or that I can, that right. But I don't like my answers, because I'd love to say that I had nothing, I had no feedback from the world that this was going to work, and I had $5 in my bank account, and I really, I would love to paint that story, because I think that's the story that, but it's in fact not true. That when, by the time I was out, I knew that it was in my power to make it work.
So
And
you must have been doing some kind of legwork then, because one of the things that has really kind of come through this is it wasn't kind of haphazard taking that leap of faith. And it wasn't so much a leap of faith of leaving that company as much as it was fate that you were going to leave that company at some point. And having this dude from Morgan Stanley reach out to you is absolutely a way to like prove to yourself that you have something of value that the world wants. And you're right, not everybody has that when they first start out on their own, but there was some stuff you were doing
Yeah.
to make yourself visible to that person so that they could reach out to you. And you were doing some of that legwork even while working for somebody else. So, can you enlighten us on kind of some of those steps that you might have been taking that helped you become that visible to that dude in that time?
Sure. Well, there were really a couple of different things. Number one was I did have a business coach, right? I did have somebody help me, and
Mm.
it was through Tony Robbins's people, and so that helped, right? Somebody to talk to weekly and sort of stay in the right mindset to succeed. That helped. By the
Huge.
way, person
Huge.
person I still speak to. So even though my financial situation has changed drastically, still have that weekly phone call with that same guy, uh, and hope I do for 20 more years. And so that was part of it. But one of the things that I'll tell you the thing and it was this guy. It was this guy. I was coming home from a ski trip, and I was still working at this other place, right? And so I had teams, and I had people at that other place. Some of them liked me, some of them didn't like me. Uh, some of them, right? And I was the guy that they had deemed to be the one who was going to teach, right? I volunteered for it, but I was also right. And there were other people who probably would have wanted those positions, and other people who wanted it, right? And so there was a part of me that was thinking, if I go out on LinkedIn while I'm still a member of this company, someone's going to make fun of me, right? I don't know how right. Let's get real. Someone's going to make fun of me, right? Someone's going to say, man, can you see what he put out on LinkedIn? Don't go and tell their buddy in the cafeteria or whatever. Pre-COVID, there were places you could sit in a kitchen together, right? And so he's gonna, I can talk behind my back. And it was this Tony Robbins coach who helped because I was coming home from a ski trip, and he's like, well, how come you didn't put out any marketing this week? And I said, well, I got in my own head because blah, blah, blah. And he said, let me ask you. And he said, how many people do you think you get in front of? And at that time, I didn't have a big following. I said, I don't know, maybe like 300. And he said, well, okay, so how many people are going to make fun of you? And I said, I don't know, like 3. and he says, okay, so you're giving up contact with 297 people because 3 people might say something nasty about you behind your back. And he said, Brian, let me let you in on a secret. They're already saying nasty things about you behind your back. Like whether or not you post on LinkedIn has absolutely they're already doing it. And so you're not even saving yourself the embarrassment of this conversation behind your back that you think you're saving yourself. All you're doing is not getting in front of 297 people who might be interested in your services. And that conversation, I was like, damn, man, that's true. Like they are saying stuff behind my back. And you're right. And so that played a pretty big role, at which point it became much more. And this is probably the biggest thing for anybody who's thinking about taking a leap like this. The minute you get to F them, I won't use that word, but it's 4 letters. It starts with F. Right. The minute you get to the people talking, the whatever, the people, the former whatever, CXO of whatever, like the minute you get to F them, and you get to look, this is how I process information. This is how I'm making sense of the world. This is the observation I make of the world. This is right. You begin to realize, Terri, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. So often, if you forgive me getting this space here, but so often people try to define reality for somebody else. So they say, right. And this is a political problem that we have. And this is right. But so often People try to define reality for somebody else. And they say, listen, if you're going to do this type of work, it has to be done this way.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the right marketing way to do it, or this is the right way to teach English, or this is the right way to whatever. Like if you have to do it this way. And then the minute you get to, I'll tell you a story here in a second, but the minute you get to, what are my observations of the world? How do I process those obligations, those observations? How do I process them? Do I think I can process that? Where am I lying to myself in the like, where's the gap in my understanding?
Mm.
Do I not have it? Like, have I filled all the gaps in my understanding? Now I'm going to decide and present my decision or my conclusions of what I'm seeing this way. Okay. That is very frightening to people.
Yeah.
Because so few people in the world do it. Right. It's just a skill that we like. So often we walk into leadership seminars and we walk out as followers, right? Because we go into leadership seminars and we say, oh, someone told me I have to do it this way. Well, you just became a follower. You did not become a leader, right? Like, so, right.
Yeah, true.
Right. And so, yeah. And so what is actual leadership? Like, teach people to observe, process, and conclude clearly so that other people can understand, right? But now we're into this. Well, what is leadership? What is excellence? What is the faith that we are risking on? And the faith that we're risking on often is the stability of that conclusion. And it's like, but what if you're the only person who you come across on a daily basis who concludes that way, right? F them, right? F them. Right. Okay. And so, and the minute you get there, you get a few more enemies. You get a few.
Yeah.
You get a lot more friends. You get tons of friends, but you do get a few, right? Let's be honest. You do, right?
There will always be trolls. I tell my clients all the time, there will always be trolls. Don't let the trolls stop you from the people who need your information. And this is exactly what you're saying here. Like, your coach told you the same thing. He didn't use the word trolls, but trolls can be fun. And so for me, I always refer it to trolls, and there will always be trolls. They exist. They're out there. Whether you do something to make them come out at you or not, there will always be somebody who has something to say. And, I had a situation too, not that long ago in 2016, 2017, where I was like, okay, people are going to be talking about me because of this situation. Why don't I give them something to talk about? So instead, I turned it around and started SpinFrogs and gave them something positive to talk about, because I knew they were going to be talking about me anyway. Might as well give them something to say that's going to actually help me instead of just, I don't know, whatever they wanted to talk about, So it's all a matter of that perception of, there's these 297 other people who still need you. And if you can show up for those 297 other people, who cares what the 3 people said? Who cares? Right. They can talk bad all they want, but at the end of the day, it's them that ends up looking bad, because they're the ones that are talking crap, not you. You're moving on. You're doing your thing. That's and right. So I love that you've really tapped into that space here.
I think that's 100% correct. And then there's a reason why people spend their time talking about you. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, right. And that to me is indicative of the whole problem, right? With love. Yeah. To those people, right? With love. It's indicative of the whole problem, which is the minute you walk into a room and you say, look, this is what I'm observing, and this is how I'm processing what I'm observing, right? And it's an unpopular conclusion, but it's a deeply understood one. They're going to attack the information you have, or they're going to attack you. Mm-hmm. If they attack you, you've won. Yeah. Right? Because if they're not saying, listen, right? So what does the intelligent person says, right? The intelligent person says, okay, let me look at those observations. Let me look at how you're processing it. Let me see if I can get underneath it. Is there something that you're not seeing here, right? And now you're talking about the information. Now you're talking about not, right? And so you're either going to, we do this with 2 heads when we teach it, right? You're either, there's the space between the two heads is quote reality, right? But we never own it. We never own reality. We never own that space. And so we own our perceptions of that space. And so the battle for reality, right? So many people think if you don't agree with my version of reality, you're a jerk, right?
Yeah.
But right, but in reality, the most credible space is own your perceptions of it, state them clearly into the space between you, and then people can choose whether or not they conclude off of your argument, in essence, that you have a deeply understood view of it. And if they say, well, listen, you're a jerk, they can and
They
they
totally
will,
can.
right? They can and they will,
Yeah.
but they didn't go after the argument. Well, the reality is in the argument, right? Like the space that matters is in the argument. And so this is where, if you forgive me here, but this is, go 10 seconds because this is going to get concrete to people here in a second. When I hear somebody say, capitalism doesn't work, right? That when I hear somebody say that, right, then I immediately say, okay, well, how do you perceive the problems, right? Like what are the problems that you're noticing? And then you start to see where they're getting that information from. And so it's like, well, is that capitalism, or is that education about capitalism, or is that is it the idea that capital makes capital that is a problem, or is it our execution of it, or is it labor law, is it right? But we concluded off of information that, okay, and then the minute we end up with conversations like that, sometimes people end up saying, listen, I concluded something into the middle of the room, which was true. And now you want a deeper understanding of that thing. You're a jerk. Right. And so, right.
Or
and
you're an idiot because why don't you see this? I don't understand how you don't know this. Right. Yeah.
But the credibility of the statement is, right, any abstract statement by its nature refers to concrete things underneath it. Yeah. So what does it refer to? And if you begin to realize that people don't understand at a deep level the concrete things underneath the thing, and this is anything, this is politics, this is politics, this is marketing strategy, this is, right, I don't know, Gary Vee told me to post once a day, so I'm posting once a day. It's like, well, is it working for you? It's like, right, yes, because it might not have been the right advice, right? Like tool is different than outcome, right? And so what's the concrete thing underneath it? The abstract statement. And people say, well, I haven't really thought about the concrete thing. Like, what am I referring to when I say anything? I should post once a week, or capitalism doesn't work, or whatever. Anything that I say, what am I referring to? If I don't know what I'm referring to, then when somebody says, hey, what's underneath that statement? Why do you believe that to be true? I have to then say, you're a jerk. Because I don't have the ability to get underneath the information that's in the middle of the room. Right. Okay. At which point, FYI, you're no longer speaking about capitalism or marketing strategy or anything else.
And that's really interesting too, because on some level they attack personally because on some level they know you're right.
Maybe.
Potentially. And they don't know how to justify that.
I'm glad you added the word potentially. I think that's the correct. I think you're right that understanding things at a deep level gives you a stability it gives you a stability. It's the Buddhists call it, like, there's waves on the top of the water, but you're down here, right? Like, no matter what's happening in, like, your life situation, your life is okay, right? And I think it's the same thing, right? That there's going to be waves up here every once in a while, but as long as you have a deeply understood, and frankly, the most important space to be in, the most credible space to be in, is I might not be in a credible space, right? Like, I be completely open when somebody says, I disagree with that conclusion. Can I tell you why? Yes, please tell me why. Because I want that new information. I want that new observation so that I can move it into, a more stable part of my own assessments. So
And there's
please give me that feedback. Like, I
there's a
want that.
really big key here too that I want to highlight, that it's not just about being brave enough to have these conversations. It's also about being unattached to your own, like having that foundation, having that concrete foundation of how you came up with your belief system, but also being unattached to it enough that you can be curious and ask the questions and not get emotionally charged with what the other person says in response, so that you can actually hear them and really come to an understanding. That's what conversation is all about, is coming to some kind of understanding. Whether we agree to disagree, there is an understanding that is reached. And a lot of times we as human beings, we live in a very emotional place, and we don't let ourselves get that deep underneath that emotional wave surface that the Buddhists and the Hindus and all of these other Eastern religions talk about, because it's this is the place that we all live in. It's just normal to live in that place, but it's hard to live in a place where there's always that calm. It's always calm, and whatever is said is cool. It's your belief, and I'm fine with
It is hard.
that.
It is hard, and it's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard and it's easy. The hard, that, if you'd forgive me being honest, the hardest, that the what you realize, Terri, and I, with the deepest amount of love to you, because you're one of these people for me. I think one of the things that, right, we're doing an online course now. We're bringing people into a community, and I think one of the things that is attracting those people, and the thing pretty much sells itself. I think one of the things that is attracting people into that community is there are, and it's not like 7 people in the world. It's like in every room there's one who's saying, oh God, I gotta jump up onto the surface here, and I gotta play around up here, because that's where the group is. That's where the department is. That's where whatever the marketing team is, or whatever, right? This, and I don't like it, like, but I got to jump up there and play up there because that's where everybody else is. And it really, and they just sort of feel like they're wasting their time. Well, what we're trying to build is a community of those people, right? But when you walk into a room, it's not like, and this is across all age ranges. It's like when you walk into a room, it's not like you find somebody who understands deeply all of the concretes that underlie their abstract statements, and really thinks about these things. How does the brain work, and how do we process information, and why would I say that, and did that come from a good place, or did that come from like an emotional space, like all of that stuff? Very few people in every room speak about it. And so most people who think that way think that they're the only people who think that way, right? It's not true. It's just that in every room there's only 1 or 2. And so then it's like, and that to me is the hardest space, right? And this is why I love my job. Like, I legitimately love my job. So on a routine basis, I get in these conversations like, well, how are we going to write that this week? Right. I get into that basis, and somebody will say, this is the deepest, most meaningful, thank you so much for this conversation that I have every week. And I think I get this conversation 6 times a day, right? Like, this is exactly how I want to live my life, is having this deep conversation 6 times a day. But that person goes off to essentially an empty room. I get to stay inside a space where everybody thinks that way, right? Mm-hmm. But that person goes, and then they come back the next week, and then I'm really looking forward to this, because you're the space where I get to investigate without being judged while we just investigate, right? Well, and then we find the language around that investigation, which I really want, right? I really want to be stable in my observations, but even that statement can sound really weird in most rooms. Sure. And so, right. And so when it gets to, it's difficult, and it's easy, but it's lonely for most of it. I was certainly lonely with it for the bulk of my life. And I suspect anybody who's listening to this, who is one of those people in the room, is feeling the same thing, that makes sense. Right. And so this is obviously something that we are aware of, and we're trying to bring people together for this specific reason. And one of the things that and you and I speak about this a lot, but from a marketing standpoint, and I greatly respect this, right? People over money, like we priced this thing for people. Like, it was far more important to us that we have the right people in the group than we have cash. Like, far more important to us that we have the right, because we know if we don't have the right people in the group, then we don't have it, like, it's gone. Right. And so
that actually leads us to a great opportunity for us to ask, how do they learn about this course and get in touch with you and follow your brilliance on LinkedIn? Like, where are the places for them to connect with you?
I appreciate that. That wasn't actually why I mentioned that, but thank you for that. Honestly, right now, I'm gonna be really honest in your group. We are like, so there are some people who are on my mailing list that don't even know that we've been doing this yet. Right. And so we're early enough in the process that the best thing to do right now, the biggest thing is, the biggest thing is just, let's get on the phone. Right. Let's whoever, and you can do that through a link on my website, and you can find that on my LinkedIn. Or just send me a message on LinkedIn or whatever. The people, here's my broad understanding. We want to speak to everybody because people matter over money to us. Like, that is a prime. We speak about this. We want to sell on the phone. We don't want to just take credit cards. Like, we want the right people. Everyone on my team is committed to that. And so I would want to speak to you at some point, either in a message or in a phone call, and just, hear from you and hear what you want to accomplish, and if we can actually help you accomplish that, and then once you're in, like, you're in the family, right? And so the idea is, let's just start that conversation either on LinkedIn or on the phone or whatever.
Okay. So thinkdeeply, writeclearly.com.
Correct.
Okay. And then LinkedIn /Brian Morgan. And it's Brian spelled correctly with an I.
Wow.
No offense to all the Brians spelled with a Y out there. So since we're at this halfway point too, for those of you that are listening, let us know this is serving you today. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, share this with your friends. We want to know that the content that we're creating here on the Terrific Tips podcast are actually terrific tips and are actually supporting you in your personal development, your business development, your journey, so that we can keep having amazing guest speakers on our show like Brian and others, and keep being able to bring you this amazing content. So let us know that this is serving you today. Leave us a comment. I know we'll engage with those as well. And then if you're wondering how to get on this show, you contact me. It's Terri@SpinFrogs.com. I will tell you, we're booking through June right now, as we're doing this live in April 9th. We're booking through June right now of 2021, which is an amazing opportunity. I'm so grateful for that, but would love to talk with you about your challenges, your tips, your habits, your tools that supported you in your business, so that together we can rise the tide and float all boats, and we can all learn from each other, because that's the fastest way to grow and be prosperous together. So if you want to be on the show, I would love to have you. Just reach out to Terri@SpinFrogs.com. And now back to you, Brian.
And I'll plug Terri here for a second. I get the luxury of speaking to Terri every week. And if you haven't had a conversation with Terri about your marketing, it would be very much worth it. And let me just, I'm going to embarrass her for a second, but Um, in the digital world, we spoke about this a little bit briefly. In the digital world, we find a lot of people search for tools, not outcomes, right? And so they say, uh, somebody said, I need a whatever, Facebook ads or whatever, like whatever. And so then they go looking for that specific solution. Um, Terri's one of the most creative thinkers in that space, right? So Terri's the one who's going to say $50 on a Facebook ad, you get one conversion. $50, you take your best client out to lunch and ask them to bring somebody, you get three. Right. So right. And you build rapport and etc. Like Terri's going to have a different approach to things than you would hear on a day-to-day basis. And in my opinion, rare, right? Somebody who's staring at a problem 360, not just, from the side. Where advocating for a specific solution is rare these days. So there you go.
Thank you, Brian. I so appreciate that. This was not scripted, guys. This was totally, I did not pay him to say that.
That's a true statement.
I just appreciate that. Thank you. And it's my absolute honor, privilege, and purpose to be here, to be that sounding board, to be that objective view. I'm in the helicopter 5,000 feet above the air and able to see ahead 10 steps from wherever you are right now because you're in it and I'm not. So I have this ability to see that and say go left instead of going right, because you're going to keep walking in a circle. Stop walking in a circle. And that's something that you do very well too, Brian, through the content that you create and help others to create, whether it be through their websites, their social media, their whatever they're creating, their contracts, their agreements, their case studies. You have this really uncanny ability to say, we maybe need to go right instead of left. Where does this space come from? Where does this brilliance come from for you?
So I know what Terri is referring to. She's making me laugh. So when we teach, okay. So the human brain, right? If we go all the way down, the brain is my fascination in the last year or so. But the human brain got larger when we got language, right? So and if we really sort of break that down, what does that mean? The human brain got larger when we got the ability to abstract things, right? And so there are, and we benefit from this in a very significant way. Like we money is an abstract concept. A border or law is an abstract concept, right? So we benefit from this in a really significant way. Okay, well, but let's go back, and this is where I think a lot of sort of people who teach writing understand that, but they miss the primary driver. So when we go back, we go, why do we have language at all? Why did it evolve? Okay, well, let's talk about it, right? And so Terri and I, a couple million years ago, were the Neanderthals were coming at us, and then I said, hey Terri, I think we should go left, and Terri said, I think we should go right, and then we had to make an argument for it, right? We had to. Well, how do we know which way is best? Well, in the left we can hide in the trees. Well, on the right we can hide in the cliffs. And then we would say, oh, is that better than the other one? And we'd project the future a little bit. We'd think abstractly a little bit, and then we'd decide. And so two things are happening: our ability to abstract and our ability to communicate those abstractions were the factors that literally allowed us humans to be the species that began to dominate the world. And so, right, it was those things. And so, and everything that we write is that's all it is, right? I mean, forget what the marketing director said about the fonts and don't use red. Like just forget, like throw all the crap out, right? Throw all the, how do you want to be perceived in your life? Like throw it out, throw all the nonsense out. When somebody reads your document, you're saying go left or right, and you're making an argument for anything, right? And this is in a technical document. This is at one point we worked for the premier planning and engineering firm in New York City. So right, in a technical document, the abstraction, the left or right, is the World Trade Center is a safe and economically viable building to build, and you had to prove that over the course of about 1,000 pages. Well, so is a LinkedIn post. It's the same thing. Language only works one way. It's left or right. The Neanderthals are coming. Should we go to the trees or should we go to the, like, it's the same thing. Language, the information only moves one way. Forget all these people who complicate it. It's ridiculous. And so, right. And so the minute somebody says, listen, my 57 ways to close, I'm like, are we going left or are we going right? And they're like, no, I'm trying to, like, I'm gonna define your reality for me. It's like, guess what? You can't. That's called manipulation, right? And so you can't. And so, right. Right. And then people don't like to sell to me because that's how I respond. But that's what it is, right? And so so many people are, so they're like, well, let me go get at your low hanging fruit. Let me go teach you to go get at your low hanging fruit. It's like, well, guess what? The 10 or 15% of the market that you want isn't low hanging fruit, right? Like somebody who's making 300 to 500 or $1 million a year, right? I love the wealth managers who speak to people as if people are idiots, and then they have a $1 million minimum of liquid investments. It's like, guess what? Someone who's sitting on $1 million liquid is not stupid, right? Like, guess what? And right, and so we have these miscommunications all over the place. And it's like, well, why are you marketing that way? And it's like, well, because somebody told me that's how I market. And it's like, well, that's low hanging fruit marketing. And we've really got to be talking about left and right. What's the argument here? And let it be naked. Let it be shown. Let it be seen. And it's like, well, that's going to make me very vulnerable. People think I'm an idiot. It's like, well, exactly. So let's get underneath all the information and let's present it in a way that
get down to that foundation.
Yeah, let's stabilize it.
Yeah.
And honestly, Terri, that's all we do, right? We teach left or right. That's all we do. And for some reason, that's groundbreaking. Well, it's really not. It's the most ungroundbreaking human thing humans have ever done, right? Modern humans have ever done. It's the least groundbreaking human thing, but for some reason today, it's groundbreaking, right? In order to stabilize conclusion, to stabilize an abstract statement with
because it's just not taught. I mean, this is not something that, I mean, you have to slow down and be present and be willing to observe that pattern of thinking. You have to have some understanding of how your brain works and how somebody else's brain work, and maybe the things that have occurred in their life that could change their perspective or their perception of what is reality to them versus what is reality to you, and understand and be willing to listen for understanding. And these are things that we just aren't taught in school. These are things that some of us inherently just do. We just know. It just happens. It's habit. It's something that we just developed with. And some of us need somebody like a Brian to come along and be like, and so this is how we go left, and this is how we go right. And this is how you get curious without causing offense. This is how you understand without judgment. And those components need to exist within our world. And it is groundbreaking because people just aren't having conversations like this regularly. I am fortunate enough that I get to have awesome conversations like that right here on the Terrific Tips and inside of Propel and with my clients. And I'm super grateful for that. And you do, because of your clients and the work that you do, get to have these conversations all the time. But most people aren't having conversations like this all the time. And I think it goes back to what you said before, where people who do think this way and who are this in tune and who are discovering that they maybe come to a conclusion in a different way than other people feel very alone because they're one of one in a room of 25 or 35 on a regular basis. And so finding their tribe becomes really challenging for some of them. Other than just showing up as yourself in some of these spaces, how did you start to find your tribe?
Well, the honest answer is I didn't for a long time. But I kept looking in all the wrong places.
Mm.
I kept looking in all the wrong places. And I'll, if you'd forgive me being honest, the um,
That's what I love about you, Brian. You're always honest. I can count on
um,
that.
when I was in the theater space, it shouldn't have shocked me that people were shallow. That shouldn't have shocked me, right? Like that was my own poor expectation. Some weren't, but come on. But when I was in the writing space, like when I was writing books, when I was teaching in English department, which I still do some of, that, like, Terri, I work at 2 universities. There are maybe 1 or 2 professors at those universities who could work in our organization. Maybe 1 or 2,
Mm-hmm.
like, including department heads, like, just including deans, like, just like there's so much nonsense about, God, we really want to define the world for other people. Like, and the minute you realize that you can't, and that the stability of a sentence is the is the depth of the understanding beneath it, you throw a lot of what we teach in academics out the window, right? Because in academics, right, you've paid somebody $5,000 or something to teach a course in which they think their job is to deliver information, which I think is nonsense. Information is outdated by the minute it comes out of your mouth. But to teach people to process information is a very useful skill, right? And so, but if you are in an academic situation where it's like, what's the information? 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 Forget the processing. Did you get all the information out about the chemistry out there? Did you get all the information out there about how people write a technical? That's the only thing that matters, is whether you got, well,
assessment tests are all just testing to see if you've remembered the information. Yeah,
exactly. And my parents were academics, so I'm sensitive to this, right? Like I grew up with this nonsense, and so the idea that somebody has enough information in their life, but they don't have to be very practiced or very good at processing it, and then you can get a PhD and teach, is nonsense. Like, that is not an expert. That's an idiot with a PhD. And so, right. And why the heck is that person in front of other people? And why the heck is that person teaching, 30 people theoretically how to think, right? Of course, they're not. They're teaching them information, but they're not teaching them how to think. Well,
at the end of the day, tape?
What's that?
Is it the red tape? Is it the standard, like the fact that there needs to be a standard operating procedure that prevents us from being able to teach people how to comprehend and process information? And that's why we're only focused on disseminating information?
There are only a few subjects which theoretically could even approach how information, right? Philosophy is one of them. English is one of them. Writing is one of them. I think writing is the most interesting, but there's only a few that could even theoretically approach it. Science should be able to approach it. In fact, science really should be able to handle this conversation. But it's rarely taught that way. And to me, it's economics. That if you, right, and so I mean, let's face facts. Like I'm very lucky, right? Like if so I get to speak like this because I know that if both universities I looked at says, listen, we heard that you trashed universities on Terri's podcast, we're not going to hire you again, it would make zero difference in the economic future of my life. It would mean nothing. It is. I do it for the student. This is the most frightening thing to a university. If you actually care about the students, that's really frightening them, because they really care about their profit margin and their jobs and their careers and stuff, but they don't really care about students. And so, right. But I get to care about students. Like, it's the only reason I do it. I don't do it because I like, I love my adjunct desk in like the hidden away storage closet, right? Like, like no thanks, right? So and so I get to do it because I love the student.
As long as
And
you have a swing line stapler, you're okay.
yeah, exactly. And so but I think it's economics because if you pay someone let's 5,000 by the way is a lot, right? So let's just say you pay someone 5,000, right? So they take 4 classes, so it's 20,000 a semester. You do it twice, that's 40 grand. Okay, somebody with a PhD or a master's degree, 40 grand is not a great salary, right? And that's a high one. That's a high salary for, right? Most are paying less than 5 grand, right? And so, okay, so what are they doing? They are taking margin, and what are they doing with the margin? Better food, better, gyms, better, right? Okay. And so they're giving the kids a resort experience because they say, well, that's what the kids need to do in order to go here, right? Okay, and that's great. And the kids do go, and they have like, Camp University for 4 years, and they love it, and they socialize, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they haven't learned to process information. Well, the minute you graduate, the knowledge that you have is outdated and the resort experience is done. So what's the one thing we could have given them over the course of 4 years that would have mattered? The ability to process information. Did anybody teach it? No. Why? Because we were hiring people who didn't have time or the assessment or the depth or whatever, because those people don't work for $40,000 a year. Right. And so to me, right. And so you're in this scheme where none of the economics make sense. And then we call it education, and then they have to do what they do, which is they begin to brand it and say, but you get a degree from this, right? And it's like, your degree from this means not a darn thing, right? Wherever that place is, right? And including Harvard, like I meet stupid people from Harvard every day, right? So your degree from here means nothing. Your ability to process information means everything. But then they have to do the branding play, and that's what they do, right? And so they get lists, and they promote their lists, and they, right, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, can we just teach kids how to think? Maybe we would get the
Novel
outcome.
idea. Yeah.
Maybe they would get the outcomes that they want in life if we help them learn how to think. But the whole structure isn't built to do that.
Gotcha. Hey, so we're coming up on our hour, and I have just a couple more questions for you. But before we get into that, what's the way that people can get in touch with you again?
So ideally through LinkedIn, that's probably the easiest if you're watching this on LinkedIn or live or whatever it is. The LinkedIn, and I'm connected with Terri, so that should make it easy. But it's Brian Morgan, and the company is Think Deeply, Write Clearly. And if this is you, for real, like, open invitation, right? If you are the person, right, everybody else is like up on the surface level, and you're like trying to have the whatever conversation down at level 15, right? Whatever conversation, and in science or in the department or as an admin or whatever, like whatever, wherever that room is for you, please, right? I'm not even going to sell you anything. Just let's, right, become part of our family, our group. Like, it is life-changing to a lot of people to have a place. And I would be honored to be that place for anybody who's looking for a place.
Yay. Thank you, Brian. And one more plug too for the channel. Those of you who are watching, thank you for being with us for this time. It's been an awesome conversation. We're not done yet. We've got one more question for Brian before we let him off the hook for today. But I so appreciate you tuning in every week to these live conversations here on the Terrific Tips podcast. Would love to know that this is serving you. So like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend. And if you're wondering how SpinFrogs can support you with your marketing endeavors, get in touch with me. Like Brian here, I'm not going to sell you anything. I just want to have a conversation with you. I want to invite you to come to a networking event. I want to invite you to just come be part of my group in my tribe and learn more about how SpinFrogs might be able to support you. Because what we know at SpinFrogs is a tool without a strategic plan is a paperweight. And I don't know about you, but I don't need a million paperweights. I need money and resources, just like you do as a small business owner. And so we teach you how to take all of those paperweights and turn them into tools that you can actually do something with our strategic planning sessions. So I would love to talk with you about that. And Brian, last question for you today.
Sure.
If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow. If I had to look back on it, it would be this. So when I was a kid, forgive me for taking a minute to answer this.
You're good.
When I was a kid, I knew my parents were wrong. Like I knew it didn't make sense, right? So these were two really smart people, theoretically, who were completely unhappy. So hey, guess what? Didn't work, right? And so all of the feedback, the actual feedback from the world was none of the things these people are teaching you are work, right? And so I went looking for mentors. Like I went looking for them. And I don't mean when I was 35 and starting a business. I mean, when I was 7, I went looking for them. Like on a bus, I would look at somebody and I would think maybe that person could be my mentor. That person looks like they're in shape, like for real, like a stranger. It would, and when I was on a city bus, I would have that, and I would just start trying to look for where I can get better information. And I felt completely lost in the world. I'm now 47. I'm still pretty lost in the world. But that kid saved my life. That it was frustrating and it was lonely but that kid saved my life looking for new information. Mm-hmm. And so I know that kid was petrified. And I think the thing that I wouldn't even want to give advice. I just want to say thank you. Like thank you for being the kid who went looking for something, because you never found it, but the looking mattered. The looking really mattered. And it was lonely and it sucked and you were fat and like stuff, right? But the looking really mattered, and it matters more than anything. I don't know if that entirely answers your question, but that's what I would say.
Never stop seeking. I love it. I love it. Great advice. Great conversation as always with you. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. I so appreciate you and all that you do for SpinFrogs, with SpinFrogs, and for all of the people that you serve. I know it's incredible. So
thank you, Terri. And same to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. We appreciate you. Until next